All right, it's a pleasure to be here, guys. Thank you very much. I'm really excited to see how young everyone is, and I'm technically a millennial. Last time I gave some lectures and talks on these specific topics, it was on a wellness cruise with Andy Weil. The average age was like 70. So connecting was a little bit difficult. I had to define what biohacking was, which I don't think I have to do tonight. So Sheldon wanted me to kind of give a little bit of my background. It's always kind of nice to kind of associate and kind of hear the story behind the person, because that has meaning sometimes. I'll kind of argue it has meaning most of the time. Is probably the most important part, especially when we connect with our patients at Essential Health and Wellness. We're usually focusing on kind of who the individual is, what makes them tick, way before we ever touch anything medically. So if you don't care, you can tune out, and then we'll talk about sleep in just a second. I really kind of got into the space of integrative functional medicine, mostly because I didn't want to see another son have to watch their father die. Pure and simple. And I knew conventional medicine was not the answer to that. The entire male side of my family all had heart attacks and passed away before the age of 50. Now, somewhere around the age of 15, I remember we transitioned from eating Cheez-Its and Oreos and hamburgers to wild salmon started showing up on the dinner table. The Cheez-Its were suddenly removed from the kitchen cabinet. And books by Andy Weil started appearing on the coffee table. If you don't know who that is, it's kind of the father of integrative medicine. He kind of looks like Santa Claus, has the big bushy beard. I hope that's not being recorded since he's my mentor. But lo and behold, he ended up passing away early of pancreatic cancer. And there's, I think, a lot of factors that go into health that's just not focused on in conventional medicine. When's the last time your physician actually asked you about sleep? When's the last time they actually asked you about what you ate? About the environmental toxins and exposures you have, at work, at home. All these things really factor into our health. So I kind of set out to kind of learn all those things. Really interested in how you kind of biohack your way to better health before biohacking was cool or a thing. I will age myself a little bit. I remember watching the '96 Olympics. Does anybody remember the '96 Olympics? Yes, thank you. All right. Michael Johnson, powerhouse sprinter, the world champion sprinter at that time, just crushing the 200 and 400 meter sprints. I remember I was probably 13 at the time, just in awe about the power of the human body. I mean, he was a machine. And how can you perform to that level? And what tweaks and modifications can we make to the system to perform at that level? And that kind of sent me on my path. I ended up kind of studying a lot in kind of the exercise physiology world. Had whole trainings as a personal trainer and strength coach. Had done that for a little while. Managed an athletic development center, and then kind of still wanted to learn more. Went to medical school and realized that it was really about disease management and not optimizing health. That sent me down a different path of, okay, if I really want to practice this way of optimizing health, I can't do it in the conventional world, and I still kind of need to make money and pay off all my student loans. So I went off to business school and was probably going to stop there, and I made a promise to my father that I would complete my medical training and kind of tracked myself to do integrative medicine. So if you're not kind of familiar with the phrases integrative functional medicine, it's just kind of a way to describe, the layman's way I describe it is kind of the evidence-based approach to kind of some of the complementary and alternative modalities. So we are trained and know the evidence for acupuncture, when that works, how to use supplements, and use supplements appropriately. Some people think supplements they're safe because they're not medications. Well, you should be treating them like medications. So you should be knowing, is there good evidence for this? What are the potential harmful side effects from this? What's the right dosing? What interaction will this have with other supplements? What interactions will have this with other medications? If you're not cluing into these things and you're not working and partnering somebody that knows these things, you could be getting yourself into trouble. So I went off to study that, and kind of fast forward, I ended up linking up with Dr. Stevens after I kind of realized academic medicine was not my cup of tea, because I have too much of that entrepreneurial spirit in me. So I joined the practice about 2 years ago, kind of helping build it. but I still do a lot of work for the Center for Integrative Medicine at the University of Arizona, do a lot of lecturing and teaching, and this lecture is part of my work that I've done recently. So, there we go. So I think as Sheldon kind of mentioned, sleep is really kind of devalued in today's culture. To be successful, we're told that we need to work harder and sleep less. Well, one of my father's favorite kind of quotes and saying when I was little, he had a lot of them. One was like, there's plenty of rest when you're dead. Unfortunately, that just kind of leaves a whole nation of sleep-deprived underperformers. According to the Institute of Medicine's Committee on Sleep, there's about 70 million Americans with a sleep disorder. That means about 1 in every 4 individuals, a quarter of the people in the room, will have trouble sleeping at least 5 nights a week or more. I think I also saw statistics that it even swings down to 1 in every 2 individuals will have trouble sleeping at least 2 nights a week. So this is a problem. And when you don't sleep, you suffer a lot of consequences besides just kind of the dark circles under your eye. In fact, there's really not one aspect of your emotional, psychological, or physical well-being that isn't impacted by poor quality of sleep. If you're not getting enough sleep, you're probably likely to be grouchy and just not fun to be around, right? How many times has somebody your relationship kind of impacted? You know, your partner, has kind of been impacted because you've been grouchy because you haven't been sleeping well. I'm seeing some heads nod. Yep. If you're Sheldon in the back, it's going to have a big economic impact. It's estimated that poor quality of sleep results in approximately $60 billion of lost revenue in the workplace, along with increased accidents, both in the workplace and just kind of at home. Having trouble a little with AD, sorry guys. Even more alarming, the fact that like your mood is kind of off a little bit, maybe it's costing your boss a little bit of money, that it's going to have a lot of impact on some chronic disease states. Sleeping less than 5 hours of sleep per night, 75% increased risk for obesity. And that's going to be linked to an increased risk for developing type 2 diabetes. Sleeping less than 5 hours a night increases your risk for cardiovascular disease by 45%. And lo and behold, sleeping less than 5 hours a night can increase your risk from all causes of death by 15%. So I kind of share with you that story that, kind of my father, our family history of cardiovascular disease, and ended up passing away from cancer. No one ever stopped to ask about these other aspects like sleep in his life. And you kind of question and ask yourself, did that play a factor into this, or could that have changed the course of somebody's health? So unless you give your body the right amount of sleep and the right quality of sleep, you're never going to achieve optimal health. You'll miss out on a whole set of health benefits, and these they're wide and varied. You're going to lower the levels of inflammation in your body, which is going to decrease your risk for things like heart attack and stroke. Probably not a concern for many of us in the room right now, but the low levels of inflammation, chronic inflammation, kind of starts to have its impact over time, and it starts kind of in the 20s and 30s. A lot of cardiologists will actually note that atherosclerosis, the actual hardening the plaque in the arteries, starts as early as the teens, and then it's kind of accelerated by poor lifestyle choices, including sleep. You're going to reduce your immune function. How many people kind of when they've had to lose some sleep, work hard, start to kind of feel like they get the sniffles and they get that cold and they can trace it back to like, hey, I've been working way too hard, haven't sleeping enough, went out and partied, and then just didn't get into bed. Happens commonly. We know it's going to increase your risk for infections, but similarly, because it's dampening your immune system, if you do that on a regular basis, increases your risk for cancers. I've already seen a lot of questions, kind of the pre-questions about hormones. A lot of people are asking questions about, like, how do I know when my hormones are off, or I'm out of hormonal balance, how do I optimize my hormonal health? Sleep, not enough sleep is going to end up raising your cortisol, which is going to totally destroy both men and women's sex hormones. You're going to feel increased levels of pain. Your pain receptors are going to be increased when your sleep goes down. And if you don't get enough sleep, memory will be impacted as well. Those are just some of the things we'll kind of end up missing out on if we don't optimize our sleep. So as Sheldon was talking about, mentioning as an introduction to this, when I first kind of talk about with my patients sleep, rarely do I first focus on getting more sleep. I first focus on how to get better sleep. We all would love to get 8 hours, 9 hours every night, but it's just not plausible sometimes. So we want to make sure we're getting the most of the time that we're spending in bed. Luckily, I don't have to explain the term biohacking tonight. Everyone gets it, right? Biohacking, yes. It's really just kind of an elegant definition to biohacking, even though we all kind of know what it is. It's really kind of changing the external and internal environment around us so we have better access of kind of and control over the signs of our body. That's really kind of the way I view biohacking. It's not just kind of some cool technology trick or tweak. It's how do we actually kind of start kind of that question I had when I was watching Michael Johnson's, like, how do I start changing the external environmental factors and the internal environmental factors start to achieve optimal health? So we're going to go through kind of 5 different ways to biohack your way to better sleep. We're going to look at mindset, medications. We're going to talk about your circadian rhythm and how you can get that in line. Look about your diet, and then finally, Sheldon talked about supplementation. It's one of my favorite. I kind of said, hey, you need to take this one seriously and do it right. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about some optimal supplements to enhance sleep. There's a great quote, and I couldn't find out who actually said this quote. It said, "My bed is a magical place where I suddenly remember everything I was supposed to do." How many people actually lay down in bed and boom, 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 boom? Yep, we all experience that. We all experience that. And it's normal to have a lot of thoughts. Neuroscientists estimate that we have up to 50 to 60,000 thoughts per day. That's part of being human. We're supposed to have these many thoughts. But in kind of our overstressed, hypersensitized world today, our thoughts sometimes can be either too loud or oftentimes not healthy. And when I'm talking about too loud, it was just that. It's you lay down, you have too many thoughts going on, you kind of have what we refer to monkey mind. Just kind of jumps to one thought to another, to another. It's like, I forgot to take the dog out, or I didn't actually send out that email. And your brain's just not shutting down. Other times, it's just unhealthy. How many times do you have that negative self-talk towards the end of the day? It's like, I could have done something better. Or I cut that individual off in traffic and flicked them off. That wasn't cool. We end up beating ourselves up for this. So how do we change that? Mindset hack number 1, practice meditation. Meditation doesn't actually have to be all that complicated, and it doesn't require that you ascribe to any sort of weird beliefs. You don't have to sit cross-legged on the floor for several hours. You don't have to stop shaving your legs, and you don't have to drink any Kool-Aid. Okay, this can be cool. There's a lot of different forms of meditation out there. It kind of ranges from just yoga to guided imagery to mindfulness-based meditation, even to just some breathing practices. And so when I usually prescribe meditation, if you will, it's kind of whatever form works best for you. I know a lot of people our age really love yoga. How many people do yoga? Okay. How many people do hot yoga where they go they sweat and get their heart rate up and feel like it's a workout? To do yoga kind of for its meditation purposes, you really have to kind of hone into that very last part of that session then. Where you're kind of doing your asana at the very end, where they're kind of, have that calming, quiet practice. That's the part that you really want to focus in on. That's the part you want to harness and replicate. So whether that's in yoga or whether that's doing a practice called 4-7-8 breathing. Has anyone heard of that? 4-7-8 breathing. It was developed by Dr. Weil, and it's fairly simple to do, and you can do it at any time. I actually kind of did it as I were kind of landing in to come to Denver. You know, they make you shut your laptop down. You're not technically supposed to be on your phone doing anything because the internet's all shut off, so you can't really do anything during that time period, and you're tired of reading. So these are kind of great times where you could pick up and just do a quick meditation practice. So I'd like to actually take you guys through just a quick 4-7-8 breathing to give you an idea what it's all about. And the reason why it's called 4-7-8 is you basically breathe in on a 4 count, you hold for a 7 count, and you exhale on an 8 count. There's nothing, I think, really magical about 4-7-8, except for the fact that the exhalation is supposed to be the longest part in a breathing practice. Does anyone know why that is? Slow your heart rate. Great. So that's the idea. You're kind of teasing that apart. So in that exhalation, the reason why it slows your heart rate is because it activates a nerve in the body called the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is this big old nerve that starts up in the brain and works its way all the way down through the chest, through the gut, and then kind of splits off. We all know kind of the fight or flight systems, right? The sympathetic, parasympathetic systems. You know, when Sheldon yells at you, you know, your heart rate just boom, shoots up and you're kind of pumping in your chest. Sympathetic system. Meditation, breathing, parasympathetic activation. It's slowing everything down. And so when you have that long exhale, you're activating the vagus nerve, which is increasing your parasympathetic tone, increasing kind of that resting tone. And the cool thing about this is if you start doing it regularly, and regularly doesn't have to happen several times a day, it's just consistent. If you can get it at least once, one period time a day, every day or at least 5 days a week, you start to increase that resting parasympathetic tone. So you start to handle stress differently. You start to sleep better. So 4-7-8 breath. I'm just going to kind of guide you through this. Yeah, again, I told you didn't have to do anything special. You don't have to get in any sort of special posture or cross your legs. I'm just going to kind of count on a 4 and count. We're going to hold 7 and exhale 8. Ready? Inhale. 1, 2, 3. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale. 1, 2, 3. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One more round. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Anyone notice anything different? Yeah. Yeah. And some of you don't feel anything at all, and you're like, this Dr. Haas guy is full of shit. I want you to reframe your beliefs about sleep. How many people think that you absolutely have to have 8 hours of sleep 5 nights a week in order to actually be healthy? 100%. Yeah. So you don't actually have to get 8 hours of sleep every night. And you're not going to necessarily have a bad day the next day if you don't get 8 hours of sleep, or even if you get 7 hours of sleep. So, I don't want you to I always kind of work with my patients not to beat themselves up. Life happens. You're not always going to get that 8 hours. And you're probably not going to have a miserable day the next day if, on a whole, you're getting decent quality of sleep. So it's also it's really important you kind of reframe your beliefs about sleep. Because a lot of times, if you have these kind of negative thought patterns, what you think gets stronger. And that's how kind of this insomnia develops a lot of the times, is you start to get yourself in bad thought patterns of I can't sleep, I'm a terrible sleeper, I'm going to have a terrible day the next, sleep. How many people know that they have a really important meeting or something they really have to perform well, and they're trying to go to sleep, and they're so nervous, I got to get to sleep, I got to get to sleep. If I don't get to sleep, I'm going to have a totally bad performance. Again, there's that unhealthy inner dialogue. Mind your medications. The nice thing of most of us in this room are probably not on a ton of medications. A fun little quote here. Medications exist beyond prescription medications. That bottle of Jack medication, most people sometimes will end up drinking to get themselves asleep. And some of you even telling yourself, Dr. Haas, like, none of this is really important. I have my Ambien. Hopefully not all of us are taking Ambien. But if you are, I'm going to really encourage you to cut down on sleeping pills, whether that's Ambien, whether that's Benadryl, whether that's some other sleeping aid that you're taking. Why? It's going to impair memory and attention. Okay? We're all here tonight because you want to be better performers in some way, form, or fashion. Okay? If your memory and attention is impaired, we're obviously not going to perform better. 2 times likely to develop depression with using sleeping aids. That's not going to get us to better performance. 44% increased risk in infections. Well, if we're sick, we're definitely not performing very well. This 44% increase is driven largely by upper respiratory tract infections. Increase your risk for the common cold. Increase your risk for actual bacterial pneumonia. 35% increased risk of cancers. All cancers, 35% increased risk. Finally, you're 4 times more likely to die from using sleep aids. And the study that showed the statistics was as few as 20 times a year. Okay, so using a sleep aid as few as 20 times a year increases your risk for death by 4 times. All right, so on to something a little more lighthearted.
Just a quick question about the sleeping aids. Is melatonin also grouped into that?
No. Okay. Yeah, this is kind of your pharmaceutical-based sleep aids. Great question. I will actually talk about melatonin at the end and its benefits. So our circadian rhythm. Does everyone know what the circadian rhythm is? Seeing a lot of heads shake. Paul told me that this was a fairly advanced group, so I didn't need to dumb this down. Dumb it down? Paul was giving you guys a lot of credit. Come on now. So we identified. We have identified that Paul is the nerd in the group and the overachiever. So the circadian rhythm is basically just your body's natural internal clock is the basic way to think about it. There's kind of this internal clock regulating cycles within your body. It regulates sleep cycle, eating cycle, hormones. Everything's kind of built on this internal clock. And there's a lot of cues for the circadian rhythm. We're probably most familiar with light being a cue because you've already heard Sheldon talk about blue light. I'll talk about that in a minute. Light's an important factor. Body temperature is a big important factor. We'll talk a little about the effect of body temperature on sleep. Food consumption, when we eat, kind of starts to regulate the day. Social interaction. As you can kind of see up here, you kind of out of bed, you start to interact with people. Those are kind of signals of, it kind of sets your clock, your 24-hour clock. Although the circadian rhythm clock is a little bit longer than 24, that's, minutia for Paul. So hack for circadian rhythm number 1 is to mimic natural light and dark cycles. And we're going to do that by getting first morning light and blocking blue light at night. Getting forced morning light. So typical indoor light is about 100 times less bright than a sunny day. And even light on a cloudy day is 10 times brighter than the light indoors. But does this even matter? Like, why am I talking about this? Well, they took a group of individuals and classified them as those who get kind of high exposure to light in the first part of the morning, between, I think it was 8:30 and 10:30. And then they took another group and said, okay, you guys had low level of light stimulation. And then they kind of looked at them and found that those in the high category of light exposure in the morning fell asleep on average almost 30 minutes sooner than those who got a low level of sleep or low exposure to light. So think about that 30 minutes over the course of 1 week. How many hours of extra sleep did you just get? So those who got exposed to a high level of light between the hours of 8:30 and 10:30 in the morning, compared to those who were ranked as having a low level, they fell asleep on average 27 minutes quicker. From the moment they laid their head on that pillow, they were in bed and fallen asleep 30 minutes faster.
So what do you consider exposure? Like, I mean, we have offices with windows and the sun shines in.
You read my mind. So the next study they did, they took a group of office workers and they split them into two groups. They took the group that got the shaft, they got the office without the window, and then they looked at the group that had the window. Okay? And so those who had windows compared to those who had no windows. The group that had windows got an average of 46 minutes more of sleep per night. Okay, so if you don't have a window, blame it on that guy and say you want an upgraded room. Install a window. But what if he's not going to give you that window room? So the first thing I kind of recommend, how many people exercise in the morning? Oh, wow. Got a lot of exercise in the morning. I hate exercising in the morning. I do walk my dogs in the morning, though. You guys will meet them tomorrow. I think Sheldon said I could bring them tomorrow. So I got two little Brussels Griffons. They're a little bit of a bitch dog, sorry. Dudes, don't judge me for my dogs. But getting morning light exposure. So whether that's walking the dog, whether that's getting your morning cup of coffee and just kind of walking outside, if you can exercise outside, even if you're a gym goer and you're kind of doing the CrossFit thing where you're just kind of working out, lifting weights, if you can get that 5-10 minute run, post-workout run in the morning and get just that amount of exposure, 10 minutes will do in the morning, first thing. We'll start to set that circadian rhythm.
What if it's dark outside?
What if it's dark outside?
I feel like by the time we start,
Hang tight. Do you get a lunch break?
no.
Dude! No lunch break. All right, slave driver. All right. So next time you have your review on the phone, take it outside and say, Sheldon, I'm outside because you won't give me an office with a window and I don't get a lunch break. And if you don't get a lunch break and you don't have a window and you wake up too early before the sun even rises, they have these little light boxes. Okay? And if you feel like a nerd setting up a light box in your room, one of my co-partner physicians, Dr. Sarakowski, we made the common workroom without windows. I'm a terrible person too. She has one of these going on. I've seen some other really cool gizmos and gadgets. How many people, I know Paul, I'm picking on Paul. He got that Oura ring. He's into some gizmos and gadgets. I've seen this really cool earbud device, which actually sends in light through the ears. And there's actually great studies that look at this. It's actually founded in research that you're getting transcranial illumination. That's medical speak for it's shining light past the bones of your head and actually hitting the pineal gland, which is the master gland, the pineal area in the body, which is kind of the master regulator for that circadian rhythm. So that's kind of cool. So if you can't get up in the morning or you get up too early in the morning, you don't have an office with a window, and you don't get a lunch break, and you don't want to look like this nerd right here, you can put in some earbuds and look cool and get some light. I don't remember the name of that off the top of my head. I will look it up for you. You guys can come find me tomorrow. I'll tell you what it is. It's currently so popular, it's sold out. I tried to get a pair when I was traveling abroad, and I couldn't. So hopefully those are a couple hacks that you guys can kind of actually use. Blocking blue light at night, or no light. So there was a study that looked at exposing young adults from light on their computers. How many people use their computer within 30 minutes before bed? Don't lie. Don't lie. Yeah, I'm guilty of it too. Yeah. The study was a computer this time, but yeah, you're on your phone, you're on your iPad, you're watching TV, any sort of screen. The study actually looked at young adults our age and basically sat them in front of a computer between 9 p.m. and 11 a.m. or 11 p.m. And they found that it shortened their total sleep time, increased their frequency of nighttime awakenings, and suppressed melatonin production. So somebody asked about melatonin. I just kind of mentioned that light was really important to regulate melatonin, especially in the morning time. Too much blue light at night. Researchers at Harvard found that exposure to blue light suppresses melatonin secretion by 50%. Okay,
Is that within 30 minutes of going to sleep? Or is that...
The studies they looked at in this case were kind of like within an hour time period. Yep. So you'll kind of see here the sources of blue light. You know, even your lights in the house will secrete blue light. You get some of the incandescent bulbs now, the non-LED ones. That's only going to kind of reduce melatonin by 40%. And then like a campfire basically doesn't do it at all.
Why is it called blue light?
Why is it called blue light? Great question. It's the spectrum of light. So light has like a full spectrum. And so blue light is kind of the brightest on that spectrum in frequency. So that's why it's called blue light. It's the actual wavelength of light that's being emitted. Great question. All right, so what can we do about this? Somebody's going to ask me about the hacks. Yeah, shut up about the science. Tell me the hacks. All right, first thing you can do to be cool is get a pair of blue light blocking glasses. Not cool, yeah? There's this company that kind of makes somewhat cool glasses called Swannies. You actually have a pair, you know, they're kind of cool, maybe. That's one hack. Another thing I do at home is the rooms that I spend the most amount of time in, I've actually switched the bulbs out. My bedroom, my bathroom, and my study. I have pulled out the LED lights that are just regular LED lights and installed smart lights. Philips makes a good brand. Lifx, L-I-F-X makes a good brand. And these allow you to control on an app on your phone the actual spectrum of light. And then you can actually set a timer that says, I go to bed at this time usually, and it's going to start, as you see here, down adjusting the wavelength of light to that incandescent light of like the campfire. So if you don't want to wear those glasses, you know, kind of the next best thing you can do is actually start to change the light exposure that you're getting in the house, especially in the rooms you're in most often. Finally, you can put in blue light filters onto your devices. My Mac right here has this app on it called Flux. Apple finally caught on to this, and on your iPhone, if you activate it, there's that night mode where it'll actually start to transition and make the screen, you may have noticed it kind of turn a little orange at night. That's doing the same thing. Doesn't kind of quite work as well. There are some studies now coming out that says that helps, but really quite not as much as we'd like for it to. So, you know, again, that rule of thumb, somebody kind of asked about, you know, kind of how much time period. You know, if you can stop, put it down an hour before you go to bed, that's going to be ideal. I know it's not always the case. So throw your glasses on, put the apps on if you can. But ideally, you're stopping an hour before. So you also kind of winding down the brain so that monkey mind is not going.
Is television blue light as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Any screen is going to be putting out blue light unless you put an actual filter. You know, they do have these, you know, mats you can stick on the screens. That's why I just kind of advise just getting glasses because it works for all the screens.
So we've seen a lot of people get those blue light glasses like just for the day for staring at their computer screens. Does that help, or is it just better to have it at night?
Better at night. Remember, the whole idea is to entrain your circadian rhythm. So you don't want to, you know, block. You want that exposure early in the day. So it, you know, not cool. They don't look cool. They look silly if they're using it at like 11 o'clock in the morning. Okay.
You can actually like put them into prescription lenses. I'm actually wearing them right now, so you wouldn't even know.
Okay. Again, the idea is you want to make sure though you're mimicking the natural daylight. You know, then the exposure of natural daylight. So you don't want to actually, because then you're going to be throwing off kind of melatonin secretion and regulation. You don't want to, you know, melatonin to start being secreted too early because the body thinks it's too early. So you'll be messing with your natural circadian rhythm. So they do make cooler forms. I would just recommend that you kind of put those cooler forms on later in the day, kind of 5 o'clock after.
I have a question.
Yep.
Is there anything to be said about like just the TV being on, like the back noise?
Yeah, terrible. Yeah, I know. That was her question. I know.
No, we were talking about like how to get your spouses on board. Yeah, he's in bed and watches TV. They want to watch TV. So I'm like, I guess I'm sitting in that new room.
Okay. New room. So the adage of the bedroom is for two things.
Take the TV out.
Oh, yeah. Sleeping and what's the other S word?
Sex.
Yeah, sleeping and sex. TV out. Dogs out. Cats out. Snacks. There's no snacking in bed. The intermittent fasting lectures for this guy. So I didn't talk about all the parts of like bedroom sleep hygiene. I kind of really focused kind of on the 80-20 stuff, the stuff that you get the biggest impact on. But I'll make sure I kind of put a plug in the end of this. So like, what are some of the other important sleep hygiene? Again, it's also real life. Sometimes you're not going to be able to pull those things out, get your partner out, and you don't want them sleeping in another room and falling asleep on the couch. I get it. This is kind of optimal recommendations. All right, hack number 2 for keeping your circadian rhythm aligned. Keep it a consistent early bedtime. Okay, so you can get jet lag just not by kind of flying out here to Denver. I know some of you guys are not based out of here. Some people are coming from North Carolina area. If you're like me, you went to North Carolina on daylight savings to Arizona, and Arizona to here. I have no clue what time it is. You can get jet lag by simply just staying up to midnight to watch your favorite movie and then trying to go to bed at the normal time on Sunday. So we kind of refer this to social jet lag. How many people keep the same bedtime 7 nights a week?
Well, actually, pretty close.
Yeah, not too many of us. Not too many of us. How many go to bed within an hour of the same each night? Okay, more hands are going up. Okay. So some researchers took a group of interior design students, and why they picked them, I think it's because they just had this erratic lifestyle because they're artsy and they're doing things late at night and they're procrastinating. I don't know. They picked them because they thought they had bad sleep cycles, and lo and behold, they did have high night-to-night variability in their sleep patterns. And what they found after studying them for a long period of time, and then testing them after a period of time, they had decreased processing time when they actually put them through a battery of testing. They ranked less creative on creativity scoring, and they just generally underperformed on all performance battery testing. And this is just because they bounced around the time that they went to bed. Unfortunately, you can't really conquer social jet lag just by trying to catch up on lost sleep on the weekends either. Like, that's not going to work. Okay. The best thing you can do is probably to start to back your sleep up an hour, a little bit, so you can, you're not going to be able to sleep in and kind of recover off of 10 hours of sleep. But the best thing you can do is to reset that circadian rhythm by just backing up your sleep time a little bit hour. So if you stayed up to midnight, and then definitely try to get back into bed by 11 o'clock and then the next night by 10 o'clock. Yep.
Is there an impact on, I know there's a huge increase in like Adderall prescriptions or anti-anxiety medication, like how does that impact circadian rhythm as far as like quality of sleep?
Yeah, great question. I actually pulled the slide out in the medications section. A lot of your psychiatric-related medications, antidepressant, stress-related medications, stimulants, all have been shown to completely disrupt deep, stage 4 deep sleep and REM sleep, the areas that you're kind of getting the most recovery. So it totally messes up with those parts of the sleep architecture, sleep cycle. All right, we're all young. We don't look like this, but how many has a partner in bed that like either freezes them out or like sweats them out?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
What was your question?
How do you freeze your partner? How does your partner freeze you out in bed? Yeah. So thermoregulation, which is basically the body's ability to control its body temperature, is really important for circadian rhythm. It's actually one of the things that start to signal melatonin release. So here, as your core body temperature starts to come down, melatonin starts to increase. So you actually want your core body temperature to start to drop a little bit at night. Okay? Starting around, kind of that 10, 11 o'clock range. Okay? Because otherwise, melatonin's not going up, and your sleepy level is not going up.
What temperature do you typically recommend?
Great question. So there's no real great consensus on temperature on the thermostat. A lot of the studies will show anything above 75 is definitely going to disrupt sleep. Okay, there's some people who do that. And then anything getting below 60 degrees is too cool. So you usually want to I usually tell people to kind of plug it in that 67, 68 range. Okay, it's kind of optimal. If your partner won't let you do that, you can take a warm shower or bath within about an hour before to go in bed. That seems kind of counterintuitive. Yep, cocked your head like, you just told me to cool yourself down. Now you're telling me to take a hot shower. So you're actually warming your body up, causing vasodilation. So you're causing, after that warming process, you're causing the arteries to kind of open up, expand, to radiate and release some of that heat. And in that process, then, after you cause the opening, then you're kind of cooling the body back down. So at that hour later, you've actually increased the body temperature to start dropping again. So you kind of temporarily increased it to get the drop to come back down. Keeping your feet warm. So this is more than just kind of like, something wise, something that your mom told you when you were little. There's actually some research and evidence to show that as you start to keep the distal parts of your body warm, your feet, that starts to promote vaso kind of dilation in other parts of the body, and it also starts to get melatonin to start to release. Interesting that the opposite hasn't been shown, so like kind of warming your upper body doesn't really seem to have the same impact on melatonin release. Swapping out your mattress. How many people know the last time they swapped out their mattress? Okay, great. How many people know how often you're supposed to swap out your mattress?
Every 8 years.
Wow, smarty pants.
I'm a 36-year-old living in a 75-year-old woman. No, I'm a 75-year-old living in a 36-year-old.
Yes, you're supposed to swap out your mattress every 7 to 8 years.
Are you supposed to turn it?
Are you supposed to turn it? I hadn't seen any actual literature to say whether turning it affects it or not. I think it depends on the type of bed you have, whether swapping it or turning it actually helps or not. Like a spring-based mattress, it's not going to have an effect. Something like a foam-based mattress, potentially. Yeah. And I'm actually going to advocate that you actually want to, if you do, next time you swap out your mattress, I'm not telling you to go get a new mattress. I don't want anyone's partner yelling at me for like making them go get a new mattress. But getting a mattress that doesn't trap heat is going to be important. Heat trapping mattresses are going to be your latex mattresses, your foam mattresses, the super comfy ones that you get to squish down like 2 inches. They trap heat. So now you end up having your core body temperature not drop in the middle of the night and the early parts of the night. If you can swap that out for like an inner spring mattress or even a gel-based mattress, that's awesome. And if that doesn't work, you can't kind of quite regulate or compete with the temperature, or your partner likes it too hot, too cold, they have this really cool thing called a chili pad, another really geeky thing like those glasses, that is basically dual climate control for your bed. It's a gel mattress pad that you lay on there, and there's dual climate control.
So I have a question. If you are doing all those things and like you're keeping the temperature of your home cool, but then you sleep under like 75 blankets, is that the purpose?
Yes.
Yeah, oh, okay.
They do have these. They do have these cool blankets made by like NASA. They call like these sleep blankets that actually pull the heat and transmit it out, but still kind of keep you insulated. So if you do like feeling comfortable and cozy with like 3 layers of blankets, they do make blankets that will actually kind of pull the heat off and kind of let it radiate out. All right, diet.
Hey, Doc.
Yep.
Everyone's gonna laugh, but what do you think about sleeping naked?
Sleeping naked. Whatever makes you feel comfortable, my friends. Whatever makes you feel comfortable. I don't. Yeah, it's probably may help you like regulate. Yeah, it may help you regulate your body temperature better. I'm always afraid for some reason I'm going to have to run out of the house in the middle of the night, so I don't sleep naked. Not that you guys really care. Optimizing your diet. I'm going to blow through the back end of this lecture, so if you have more Q&A and we want to get through fasting before they kick us out of here. Cutting out spicy foods at dinner. Spicy foods have, you probably have heard of capsaicin and red peppers. Yep, some of the smarty pantses. Paul, I think you've made your matchup here.
I told you we were advanced.
So capsaicin and peppers and other spicy foods will actually raise your body temperature. So then it kind of fights against the whole idea that we just talked about. We want to drop your core body temperature at night. So spicy foods will also aggravate reflux. How many people have ever had reflux after eating too much or spicy food? Yes. And reflux is then going to be very disruptive to sleep. How many people then wake up in the middle of the night being like, oh, yeah. Okay, so we don't want to actually disrupt the sleep. So, you stayed out too late on Saturday, you ate some spicy Thai food, you had, 1 too many glasses of wine at night, and now we've just made that, trying to optimize that 5-hour sleep period that we had until we had to wake back up the next morning, we just totally wrecked it. Here's a great one. Eat breakfast like a king and dinner like a pauper. So as you eat, you actually want kind of, I know some people are going to struggle with this, having breakfast be kind of the larger meal, or definitely lunch being one of the larger meals, and then tapering the quantity of food down until you get ready to go to bed. Okay, so you actually do not want dinner to be the largest meal. It's going to delay the onset into deep sleep. And it's going to disrupt kind of that circadian rhythm pattern. Okay, so we want to be able to get into deep sleep quicker, and this is going to delay and push that time out.
Do you see like certain carbs, or like is that what it is, right? Like things that are slower to digest, is that what's keeping that going?
Just the total food quantity.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not so much what you're eating, it's just
There is what you eat. So I usually recommend kind of higher protein, higher fat content, and less carbohydrate. Because then the carbohydrates introduce a whole rabbit hole I'm not going to go into about insulin response and how that may affect hormones and sleep patterns and circadian rhythm. But a good kind of rule of thumb is, definitely as you have a smaller meal at night, you want something that is kind of more satiating and not going to drive a high insulin spike and crash the blood sugar. Great point. Thanks for bringing it up. All right, reduce evening time alcohol. I didn't say eliminate. I know that's no fun, but you definitely want to reduce this. As alcohol is metabolized in the body, how many people actually had a glass or 2 or maybe 3 and they actually went to sleep quicker, right? But then kind of had this rebound effect where you kind of wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and you're like, and then you don't get back to sleep. So as your body kind of starts to metabolize that alcohol, you end up kind of having this rebound effect with sleep. And then it's going to block REM sleep. So you kind of woke back up in the middle of the night, and then now you're not getting into REM sleep, which is that period of sleep where you kind of dream. And it's thought that a lot of the processing of the events of the day happen during REM sleep. You're not kind of clearing and filtering out all those thoughts. It's not going to be a big problem for this group, but as you age and you kind of increase the risk for developing sleep apnea, it's going to make that even worse because alcohol acts as a muscle relaxant. It's going to relax the muscles of your neck. It's going to increase your risk for snoring, and snoring is going to disrupt sleeping patterns. So kind of rule of thumb is you want to try to minimize the amount of alcohol 3 hours before bed. So, I know you got to live life. So be picky with your fruit. So here are some foods You know, you asked about specific foods. These are carbohydrates. But interesting, there's some cool studies that showed kiwi consumption within an hour before bed was able to improve total sleep time by about 15%, because some of the phytonutrient properties of the kiwi is able to improve overall sleep efficiency, the amount of time like you're actually sleeping in bed, by 5%. Again, these are starting to get kind of in the weeds in terms of things to kind of really hack and move kind of that needle up on improving sleep. Cherries was another one. 8 ounces of tart cherry juice in the morning and at night for 2 weeks was associated with a reduction in insomnia severity scores. And they also kind of looked at melatonin, and it was actually increased urinary melatonin as well. So melatonin's good. We'll talk about it in just a second. Moderating caffeine intake. I think this one's probably self-explanatory. I'm not going to kind of dive too much in this one. Those of you out in the audience kind of know which one of you are kind of the fast metabolizers and slow metabolizers of caffeine. This doesn't always apply to everyone. Some people can chew through caffeine like nobody's business and have an espresso and then hop right in bed and not affect their sleep. That really all comes down to kind of genetics and your ability to metabolize the caffeine. All right, so the fun part, supplements. Take your how many people take a multivitamin? How many people religiously take that thing in the morning? How many people like forget about it, it stays in their pocket, and then they like shoot it towards the end of the day? Yep. So B vitamins, particularly in the multivitamin, can interfere with sleep and it actually kind of increase kind of tiredness upon waking if you take it in the evening. B6 can actually trigger vivid and really intense, bizarre dreaming sometimes for some individuals. And then the B12 component increases your sensitivity to light. So remember how we said we want to reduce light exposure. We want more kind of that dusky feeling in the evening and be less sensitive to light. If you're taking B12 and you're taking that in the back half of the day, you're going to increase your sensitivity to light, which we don't want to be doing in the evening time. So take the multivitamin in the morning. Melatonin.
When you take supplements, sometimes it can make you sick, based if you don't have enough food in the morning. Yeah. So, do you just recommend eating more food, or how would you do that?
Yeah. So, if you're one of those individuals that are sensitive to these supplements, definitely take them with food. I take mine with food. Again, as long as you get in the front half of the day, so lunch or before, you're going to be okay. You don't want to be kind of doing this 3-4 o'clock deal with your multivitamin. Yeah, that's like a 20-minute conversation into itself. But kind of important high-level points. You want something that's going to have, how do I rip this one apart in 30 seconds or less? You want to have a kind of a wide complex on your vitamins. So both fat-soluble and water-soluble vitamins. So you want something that has kind of vitamin D in it. Your vitamin E, I should say, kind of mixed tocopherols on there. So you want something that's going to have some good antioxidant component to it. A lot of times you'll see people throw kind of grapeseed extract in there. And it's going to also depend on gender as well.
Have you heard of the ritual vitamin for women?
I have not. If you have it, you bring it in tomorrow. I'm happy to take a look at the back of the ingredient panels. Anyone has it?
What we'll do, we'll send out the vitamin recommendations. I've got the whole shebang from Jay, and also Wade will also be talking about as well. This is definitely not all supplements are created equal.
No, not all supplements are created equal. You want to have a physician who actually understands supplements, because there's so many things. When I pick up the back of that bottle and take a look, it's hard to kind of generalize because that's like an hour lecture unto itself. And it also depends on the individual. So what Wade's getting is probably not the same thing Sheldon's getting, and the same thing as Paul's getting from Dr. J. It's very personalized, and it's also going to depend on gender as well. So thanks for bringing it up. Bring supplements in. I'm happy to look at them. Melatonin. Use this one wisely. So it's a hormone kind of synthesized endogenously, meaning it's produced by our bodies, and it's basically it's kind of what regulates that circadian clock. It's the hormone that kind of tips you off and gets you to the circadian clock, and it's highly sensitive to the blue light, that wavelength of light. So you're going to start kind of suppressing its secretion with that blue light, which is why we spend so much time talking about the blue light. Medications sometimes can alter this as well. Caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, blood pressure medications, over-the-counter analgesics, Motrin, Tylenol, that's going to start down-regulating. And again, I know sometimes we beat our bodies up. This is not to say you can't take the occasional Motrin if your knee's hurting or you got some back pain, because that's going to make obviously harder to sleep. And this is more just kind of for the people who are using Motrin like every day, every night, know that it's going to impact melatonin. The way to take this one, kind of the best way to take this one is you want to be going at a lower dose range. Some people think like, oh yeah, more is better. Actually, the studies are so melatonin works most effectively in that 2.5 milligram range, 1 milligram range. You start going above 5, it starts having different properties and may actually alter sleep cycles. So if you're going to use melatonin, keep it in that 2.5 to 1 milligram range. I usually recommend a sublingual form, which means basically under the tongue. You can get dissolvable tablets that go under the tongue. You can get little sprays that go under the tongue. That kind of has it bypasses metabolism in the liver, and we call it first pass metabolism, and it allows it to get kind of directly into the bloodstream and kind of pulls you down and mimics the natural melatonin curve. Melatonin's very well tolerated, not a whole lot of side effects to that one.
When should you take it if you're going to do a supplement, like 30 minutes to an hour before bed?
Yeah, 30 minutes, 45 minutes,
If you happen to have a couple of glasses of wine, is melatonin
is it gonna
to take or better?
Yeah, it's not going to have it's not one of those things like you shouldn't be taking Xanax and wine. So it's not going to totally knock you out and not wake up the next morning, but it's not going to undo that wine. Yeah, it will not undo the 3 glasses of wine. Yeah, don't expect that you can no, it will not make things worse. Don't expect to make it go better.
I have one more question on melatonin.
Yeah.
I think somebody told me at one point that you can't just take it and not take it, take it and not take it. It's almost got to be a little bit more consistent. I wanted to take it whenever I was
This one you can take and not take.
You can?
It acts more like a neurotransmitter in the brain than it does a hormone. It is technically a hormone. It acts more like a neurotransmitter. You can take it, not take it, not take it.
Okay.
Do you have anything else other than melatonin? Because I used to take melatonin and I found that waking up in the morning was difficult. I take ZMAs.
Okay, I'll cover ZMA or make sure I don't miss the ZMA. And we'll definitely be talking about that in the men's health talk tomorrow night as well. So yes, tried melatonin. Melatonin doesn't work. There are a few other things in the grab bag to try. I would always make sure that you've done everything else I've talked about up until now. Usually my caveat for supplements is no amount of supplement is going to undo a crappy lifestyle. Okay, so if you're drinking 2 to 3 glasses of wine before you go to bed, you're sitting there and you're watching your iPad, up until 20 minutes before you go to bed, you haven't done any sort of meditation, all of that, no amount of supplementation is going to undo that. But valerian is another one, and I say give it a chance, and the reason why I put it kind of a chance is valerian, unlike melatonin, does take longer to work. Okay, so this one is required to kind of take a longer period of time. No one has to raise their hand, but if anyone is currently taking kind of sleep aids or an Ambien or Ambien-like derivative, this one's actually been shown really well for people who are trying to wean off benzodiazepines or benzodiazepine derivatives like Ambien. This one acts kind of similar to that, but more natural, and has actually been helpful for people who are trying to come off their sleeping aids.
Is that what you sometimes find in the sleepy time teas?
Yes, you will find this one in the sleepy time teas, usually with lemon balm, hops. Usually you're at a dose of 400 to 900 milligrams. And this one you usually take a little bit earlier, in the 1 to 2 hour range before bed. Usually well tolerated. Common side effects are going to be headache, GI upset, dry mouth. Some people actually describe vivid dreams with this one. Glycine. This is one of my new favorite ones, especially kind of if you're in that place where, let me back up. What is glycine? It's an amino acid. It's non-essential, meaning it's produced in our body. You can get it through things like meat, fish, dairy, legumes. It's going to help kind of regulate the body temperature and increase serotonin levels, which is actually required to make melatonin. I know all of you watched everything Sheldon told you to watch before coming here? I know there was that little lecture that guy talked about endorphins, serotonin, oxytocin. So serotonin is really, it is important. It ties into sleep because it's a precursor to melatonin. This one's kind of cool because it's been shown to reduce the time it takes to fall asleep and the time spent in deep sleep. And then they did a study on those people who they knew they were going to get a crappy night's sleep. It's like that night, like you're still staying up late to prepare for a deadline or a presentation, and you're going to be kind of wired that night anyways, and you're going to be nervous about it. They gave individuals glycine before that and actually looked at their scores of kind of daytime fatigue and performance and found that they actually continued to perform very well despite that night of kind of poor sleep. So this is kind of a one that I kind of plug in, kind of knowing that, hey, I know I need to still kind of perform pretty well, but I know I kind of expect I'm going to get a crummy night's sleep. So I'm kind of adding this one into my supplement. It comes in a powder form. It has a little bit of a sweet taste to it. No, they didn't add sugar to it. That's that amino acids kind of taste to it. So if it has a little bit of sweet taste, that is normal. The dosing is 3 grams 1 hour before bed. Okay, you can just mix it in water. If you're hardcore, you can just shoot it and let it dissolve in your mouth.
Are there any just morning after effects with any of these in terms of feeling like drowsy or extra tired in the morning when you take them?
Right, good question. This one is least likely to have any side effect of that groggy drowsiness. Valerian is probably most, and melatonin kind of in the middle. But I usually don't get a whole lot of people. And usually when people have that effect with melatonin, it's because they dosed too high. All right.
Supplement recommendations. Supplements is, I really don't have that much problem going to sleep, but I was recommending us to
Great question. Do I need to take this if I'm sleeping well, I'm not bothered by my sleep? No. So these supplements are kind of like aids, tools, extra hacks if you're doing everything else I talked about prior to the supplement section. I imagine all of us probably have a little something we can optimize prior to taking these supplements. But real life happens. We travel. Melatonin's great for that. There are actually apps out there that actually show you when to take your melatonin based upon your current time zone and the time zone you're going to. There's really cool apps for that. So it'll actually say, okay, you need to start taking melatonin during this time of day to prepare for where you're arriving, and when you're leaving, then it'll tell you to start taking your melatonin at different times. So there's just kind of different places it plugs that. Glycine is a great one. Like I kind of use that one intermittently when I kind of know I've spent too much time, working late at night, kind of a little wired, haven't had a chance to kind of unwind, kind of take the glycine.
What if the issue maybe isn't falling asleep, but the staying asleep? Like, I know I tend to have to get up and use the bathroom in the middle of the night, and then my struggle is to fall back asleep.
Okay. So obviously do the obvious, which is taper fluid intake.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I recommend people keeping that sublingual melatonin by their bedside because it's rapidly absorbed into the body, and then just hitting a spray of melatonin usually will get people to get back into sleep.
What are your thoughts on too much sleep?
Spots on too much sleep. Yes, you can have too much sleep. I didn't talk about this because the whole focus was on trying to get more and better sleep. I'll remember the slide I kind of showed you on kind of the impact sleep may not have on chronic diseases. The reverse is true once you start hitting over 9 and 10 hours of sleep consistently. You start experiencing some of those exact same chronic diseases, including increased risk for death.
Are there effects from getting up, let's say 5 a.m. Monday through Friday, and then on the weekends sleeping in longer?
So that's that social jet lag. Yeah, that's that social jet lag I'm referring to. So you're throwing your sleep cycle off. The best thing to do is still trying to keep within that hour if you can. So yeah, I mean, we all want to kind of relax and unwind on the weekend a little bit, but you definitely don't want to be swinging wider than 2 hours.
Could you wake up and then go back to sleep?
Could you wake up and go back to sleep? Again, you're disrupting the circadian rhythm. Yeah, you miss that whole kind of timing your body's natural time cycles.
By the way, what about low-dose Adderall in the morning, like quick release, not extended release?
So that one I tell people that one's like, everyone's going to be individualized and different sensitivities to that. Like I have patients who take 80 milligrams twice a day and it doesn't touch them. And then I have other people who take like 10 milligrams and they're like wired the whole day. So you need to, melatonin's a great one for that. So I'll use melatonin a lot for individuals with ADHD as well. And then there's some other things we can talk about if you want to yank me off the side about kind of optimizing ADHD. There's some other things you can be doing. Beard.
Okay, cool. So going back to blue light really quick. So like in theory, you watch TV every night, right? You fall asleep to the TV on. If it doesn't affect your sleep cycle, is it still bad?
How do you know it doesn't affect your sleep cycle?
Well, I feel as though I sleep soundly.
If you're waking up in the morning when you're supposed to, like you're conquering the day, not having a problem, okay, great. Now, my concern would be what sort of rhythms and patterns you're going to be in training for later down the life, down the road. So, a lot of the stuff I was talking about, part of the reason why I led with the kind of my story of my father was all these things cumulatively add up. There's a reason why most people develop cancer, heart attack, diabetes, insomnia, sleep apnea, all of this crap in their 40s, and 50s and 60s. Is all of these poor lifestyle decisions have a cumulative effect over time. So it may not be impacting you today. Tomorrow, I can't tell you that.
I don't think I missed this, but what's your strategy for naps?
Strategy for napping, yeah, great. Power nap, you don't want to take a long enough nap that it's throwing off that circadian rhythm. So if you're taking a long enough nap that you feel you're too refreshed starting around 8 o'clock at night, you've took too long of a nap.
I know that you mentioned valerian was a good way to wean off of it, but so you take very high doses of sleeping medication. What is the best way to wean off of that aside from valerian?
You definitely want to be working with your physician. And then you want to be kind of figuring out a taper strategy. So you want to kind of be coming down off of it over a long period of time. So if I were working with a patient who said, hey, I want to come off of this, I'll probably just kind of start cutting in a quarter, cutting a quarter, while I'm adding something like valerian on board. White noise, great. Yeah, I didn't put that plug in there. There are some really cool white noise devices. That is going to be really helpful if you kind of in an apartment with a noisy environment around there, because you obviously don't want to be waking up. So white noises there are great options out there for white noise devices.
Maybe you can share. Dr. J shared with me around. One of the things I'm still trying to wean off. The blue blockers are awesome, by the way. Once you get used to them, it's really easy. You don't even think about it. So totally recommend that. But I still read in bed. Mm-hmm. So maybe you can share Dr. J's hey, even if you like reading at night, probably do it on the couch somewhere. Don't lay in bed and read your book.
What did I say you do in bed?
What's that?
What did I say you do in bed?
Yeah. Just to clarify that.
Yeah. So sleep, sex, and don't snack. So, yeah, I mean, the bed is for just that. If you're doing other things, you enjoy nighttime reading, more power to you, do it. Don't be doing it in a bed. You want to train the bed for sleep.
I have a question about dreams. Is there a way to mellow your dreams? Because my dreams are extremely realistic, and I wake up sometimes, I don't know if it was a dream or if it actually happened.
It happens.
They're very intense. But I don't, and it happens all the time. So I don't know if there's melatonin will help with that. I don't know if anybody else has challenges with dreams.
I don't know of any kind of supplement you can take to kind of mellow out the dreams. I would kind of recommend doing a meditation practice prior to bed and see what effect that has. So even that's a gentle 5 yoga pose sequence, or doing actual mindfulness-based meditation practice, kind of make that your activity right before bed, see what impact that has.
Could it be diet related? Yeah. Just diet and what you eat, or putting in your body before bedtime? If you eat a later dinner, what you're putting in?
That it can, and that's highly variable on each individual. Then I usually recommend kind of a diet journal and then a sleep journal. Yeah.
This is probably relevant to myself, but I wake up exactly all the time, and sometimes like when you need to get extra sleep, it's really difficult. Are there any hacks to kind of like getting you back to sleep, like on a weekend when you have time to sleep in or whatever? Would it just be to spray?
How many hours of sleep do you get a night?
Consistently, like 7 to 8.
You're doing great.
Sometimes those nights where you don't get that, and then you're like, I'm like up a minute before my alarm will go off, and I maybe want to sleep in.
Okay, yeah. You can try the melatonin, but I'd probably be cautious against that. I mean, I assume like you're talking about like you wake up at 6:45 and you wanted to sleep till 7 or maybe 8. I mean, then you're going to be kind of thrown off. Melatonin is actually supposed to be, dropping and not be high. So, the kind of the next best recommendations is around some of those sleep environments in terms of white noise in the background, making sure the room's completely pitch black dark, so none of the natural light cues, because your circadian rhythm's time to light. So that's where you just kind of do the blackout curtains and kind of create that sleep sanctuary.
So you have dogs. How do you feel about pets in the bedroom as far as
So
bedroom or
I keep mine in the bedroom because I know they're not going to disturb me. If I put them in bed, they're going to disturb me. They're going to wake me up early. They inevitably have to go out or something. They're crate trained, so they stay in the crate in the corner, and they do just fine.
Two questions. What are your thoughts on magnesium before bed?
Yep. Yeah, we had a ZMA question here. Yeah, great.
Same thing.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
what about marijuana?
Marijuana, good deal. Sheldon, am I allowed to answer that question? Am I allowed to answer that question? Okay, yeah. Once you get back to North Carolina, he's still drug testing you, though.
We hit in the office, and today I was like, yeah, we're going to hit that bomb.
You guys are keeping Sheldon young. Magnesium. Magnesium acts as like a relaxant to the body, especially a muscle relaxant. In terms of the evidence for magnesium is not as high as some of the other ones I showed you in terms of glycine, valerian, and melatonin. It is going to have an effect. It will improve sleep, not by as much. If it works well for you, use it. My plug on magnesium is usually you're in that 400 to 600 up to like 800 milligram range before going to bed. I usually recommend a non-oxide form. What does that mean? Just pick one of the ones that end in a G, glycinate or glarginine. It's better absorbed. It's easier on the stomach. If you take something like mag citrate or oxide, it's going to cause GI distress, maybe even kind of loose stools. That's how we actually treat constipation. And the marijuana question, yep, that's a perfectly good strategy for sleep. Know that if you kind of do too much too frequently, you may start impacting your actual sleep architecture over time, and that may not be good. So
What does that mean?
that means like if this is like 5 nights a week, like every week, probably going to be impacting your sleep architecture.
All the data provided for adults, right? I have 2 children. Does that change like the minimum sleep?
I think melatonin has been shown to in terms of minimum sleep quantity. Yeah, I mean, you'll notice that like some schools, like I've noticed like in Arizona before I left, they actually changed like middle schoolers get a start at like 9:30. So yeah, sleep, circadian rhythms are actually different over different life cycles and periods of life cycles. So what age range? Yeah, so they're definitely still allowed to get more sleep. Yep, like 10 hours. Yeah, I think I've seen studies. I was about to answer that question. I think I've seen studies down to like 4 or 5 years of age. Chloroform? Like the green tablets? Any other serious questions?
So how long do you think it typically takes for these to start, benefiting your sleep? And if you've tried the majority of these and they haven't worked, what would you recommend other than medication provided by a doctor if these don't work for you?
Sounds like I'd probably recommend you just kind of yanking me to the side and we'll talk because it sounds like there's a lot of things you've tried well. These are kind of like my top 80% hacks. And do you feel like you've tried like everything we've talked about? You know, kind of the meditation routine prior to bed. There's a gentleman by the name of. There's kind of two other things that are when I kind of get advanced. Is there going to be sleep hypnosis? Have you done hypnosis? Okay, so there's a gentleman by the name of Steve Gurkovich. He's like one of the top hypnotherapists in the country. And then there's another guy by the name of Ruben Nyman. He's like one of the top bloggers on like Huffington Post and New York Times. Both of these guys are actually out of Tucson. They're like our sleep experts for the Center for Integrative Medicine. I've seen the hypnosis do some really wonderful things. And if you're like really, really desperate and you really want to try some advanced techniques, I've seen some people actually, there's a lady, I'm blanking on her name. She'll actually create music to play at night that actually is kind of entrains your actual brain rhythms. And then a similar device and gadget that's kind of cool along the same lines is Muse. And it's actually an EEG-based meditation device that, like, hey, you may feel like you are meditating or like you're going through the practice of meditation. This will actually give you direct feedback if your brain waves are actually in a meditative state or not. And it works off your iPhone. You strap it around your head, and it gives you direct feedback if you are in a meditative state. Those are kind of some things that I would be reaching for somebody who's done every single thing I just talked about. But you can come yank me to the side, and we can talk about even some more strategies, and I can go through what you've actually done and haven't done, and maybe there may be some tweaks to some of the stuff you have done.
Thoughts on binaural beats?
Binaural beats. Yeah, that was kind of the theory behind some of that music. I'll use that sometimes as kind of calming. I think it starts to touch on the idea of having a winding down of sleep. Dr. Nyman will actually kind of say, sleep is not about taking something to go to sleep. It's about letting go of something to sleep. So you need to shift to kind of that relationship. It's like letting go, creating a routine to induce slumber. Binaural beats is a great way to do that.
Those versus magnesium?
Yeah, again, I said, I kind of tried to put up there what is backed by the most evidence to have the biggest impact on sleep. There are a couple other ones I didn't have up there. Lemon balm, L-theanine, magnesium. There are definitely some other ones. Like I said, if you've kind of one of those individuals that have already tried a lot of what I talked about, there are some other supplements you can try out there as well. I just didn't throw all of them up there, otherwise we would continue talking on that.
Like essential oils, as far as like lavender, like creating that environment that are supposed to have.
Yeah, that's part of that routine, creating that kind of routine for sleep. Lavender is a great one for relaxation.
I heard something the other day on a podcast that like if you read before bed, that like what you're reading has a big impact. So like if you're reading like a fictional story, it's really good for you. But if you're reading like a serious book or a leadership book or like something that's just more self-improvement, it's like keeps your mind spinning. Is that accurate?
Same thing with what you're listening to or watching on television. 100% accurate. All right, Sheldon, you want to keep doing questions? You want to like hammer through? I don't think we're going to be able to get through.
Yeah, I'm thinking, I think the intermittent fasting is important. I think that.
I can shrink that one down to about 30 minutes, but I can't do any quicker than that.
Yeah, I think they might be kicking us out of here at 9 o'clock. So let me check to see if we can stay over.
Yeah, see if they'll give us 15 minutes, and I could probably crush intermittent fasting in 30 minutes.
Don't you want to eat your food?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Howie, my food. I have food?
Yes. My food. You have food.